Hello, Christopher. How are you
Hello,
today?
Csaba. Thank you very much. All fine and ready to kick on another
Yeah.
day in paradise, as they say. So,
Yes.
so,
So
so
today,
let's
today
talk
we
about wine. For a change. Let's talk about wine for a change.
yeah, we can do that as well. Yes. Yeah. So today, what we thought about topic-wise is vegan and vegetarian wines.
Okay.
Obviously, very an interesting topic nowadays.
Yeah,
Obviously,
very accurate.
with change in the word generally.
Agreed.
And first of all, I think number one thing to discuss is what makes a wine vegan, what makes a wine vegetarian, because a lot of people don't even know. When they think about drinking wine, I had actually friends who turned vegan and they drank wine, and I said, like, do you know if it's vegan or not? And they said, like, why, it's just grapes, isn't it? And then that's the explanation comes, and then a slight shock sometimes.
It's very fair, but in essence, exactly, it's fermented grape. There's a bit of sulfur in addition at some stage.
Yeah.
Again, in the vineyard, usually, especially nowadays, with a lot of winemakers and estates turning into organic and biodynamic.
Yeah.
There's no much interaction with animal material as such.
Yeah.
Yes, there is a horn that have been filled up with concoction that is buried according to the moon cycle and so on and so forth. So it's a little bit mystical and so on. But in essence, yes, wine is a vegetarian product. There's no animal, there's no process that uses any animal power. However, this is where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
However, it's not entirely true. For, I would say, 95% of the wine production worldwide, the vegan and vegetarian aspect really changes potentially at filtration level. So what does that mean? It basically means that when you make your wine, basically there's always sediments, the gross particle, the lees, and so on and so forth that are there to add the color, the flavor profile. If you talk about lees in white wine, those part needs to be filtered out because you don't want your wine to be cloudy. Say some ones that are cloudy and it's a style, but it's not really what consumption and consumer wants in general.
Yes.
Those particles needs to be removed as such. So in I would say in the last about 50 years, a lot of machinery, so filters, decas, and so on and so forth, that basically you build that sort of cake. So it's layers of, it's a machine. You put your wine on one side, it comes out on the outside, and according to the size of the filtration, larger or smaller, you get rid of most of the particle. Also, what is important at this stage is sometimes there's a bit of sugar could be left. And the thing is, you don't want your wine to restart fermenting as the temperature goes up because everything happens under, so that's temperature control around, 17, 18, maybe 20 degrees. But as soon as the wine could actually reach a bit further, if there is a bit of sugar, there's a bit of yeast, you just wakes up and realize, oh, there's a bit of sugar, let's go to work.
Yeah.
And as we all know, sugar, yeast eating sugar, bypass product CO2. That's what you get sometimes when you wine could be a little bit sparkling if it's not actually in our style.
Yeah.
Obviously, for red wine it's a bit less than for white, and obviously that's how you make champagne in it, or any really good quality sparkling wine with that intention is the second fermentation in bottle.
But when you don't have the intention, obviously, you don't want that.
But that's exactly the intention. So that's the filtration. Back in the days, and when I'm talking about that, 150 years, maybe even 100 years ago, the wines of Bordeaux, which were the staggering, the sort of the cloud side, the beautiful, expensive, rare, and most demanded ones in the world at some stage, were in the barrel, because you have to also remember that the barrel was the only sort of vessel they knew how to use.
There's no stainless steel, there's nothing else.
They had a bit of concrete because they could manage the concrete, but the stainless steel as such didn't really exist. So in order, and the machinery wasn't there. So in order to filter, that's at that stage, they use organic matter and definitely animal derived matter. So there's three sort of glue. There's the fish glue, which is basically derived from fish.
Yeah.
There is the bentonite, which is actually bentonite is actually a clay derivative, so it's not really animal. There is bull's blood, which is not really entirely made of bull's blood, but as the name is called, and there is definitely an element of blood because it manages to concentrate and just basically encapsulate all those all in contact of proteins. It just basically compacts and sort of trap all the different elements.
And it doesn't have anything related to Hungarian wine, bull's blood.
No, nothing to do with the
just to clarify it.
The Aigues of exactly the Kadaka variety and so on and so forth. Nothing to do with that. And then the last but not the least was actually egg white.
Yeah.
So obviously an animal derived product. So to give you a bit of story, if you travel to Bordeaux and you go to a fancy restaurant or any given restaurant or any pastry shop, there is always what they call the cannoli. This little cake that are kind of rounded all around the edges and quite sweet and quite yellow. Yeah. Why are they so yellow? Because the white for the wine and the yellow of the egg was for the cake. That's how basically the cannoli was.
Actually. I didn't know that.
Because they didn't know what to do with the yellow, so the yellow of the egg. So that's how they invented that recipe. So put that apart. So the egg white, same thing as soon as it touches the wine and some proteins, it conglomerates. And therefore it traps all those different elements, which because it's becoming much heavier, therefore it falls at the bottom. So it's easier when you look at the barrel, the bones or where the tap will be inserted is always a little bit above the minimum.
To avoid the sediment, obviously.
Exactly. So basically you take all that wine from there, and then when it's empty, it's only the lees and the gross element that you don't really want that is trapped there basically, and then processed in different matters. So those wines were and are still made, obviously, like the Chateau Margaux of this world and the Chateau Angelus, the expensive wines from Bordeaux are still made some like that. Some in California, again, we're talking about, very elevated, expensive and rare wine, iconic and so on and so forth. And that's the element that will change a wine from being vegetarian/vegan to actually not being such a product. So as I said, this represents maybe 2, 3, maybe 5%, maybe even less of the world production. So in essence, wines are vegetarian/vegan.
Yes. In terms of this percentage used, you say it's a small percentage, but obviously a lot of wineries still don't put them on the label. Do you think it makes sense to put it on the label with all the current trends towards being vegetarian, vegan nowadays?
I think it's an assumption that people know. I think it's an assumption that most people don't actually really care. I'm talking about the winemaking process.
Yeah.
By law nowadays, if you look at the bottle, there's usually a sort of a lady-shaped with a belly, so basically pregnant lady with a cross around it, meaning basically don't drink while pregnant. It's not really recommended that you do whatever you want. That's not really a problem. But otherwise, some wines are used. You see on labels, vegetarian, vegan, because they want to go in that direction to prove that they are working in that direction, and they are very adamant of it. Most of the people I work with in terms of importing, when I have spreadsheets of wines available, I actually know when the wines are vegetarian and vegan. So in the restaurants I operate, we have, as I said, we have 98, 99% of the wines that are vegetarian. Only mainly the big Cabernets of California's, the expensive Bordeaux. I mean, again, it's expensive because imagine an estate like Chateau Margaux. So Chateau Margaux in size is 400 hectares because they own most of Margaux as such. In planting, it's a bit much less. It's about 100 hectares. Still produce roughly, 50, 60, 70,000 bottles according to the vintages. So you imagine that 70,000 bottles divided by 225 liters, which is the size of the barrel. It's quite few barrels. And to filter a few barrels with egg white, it's probably about 10 eggs per barrel. So you just do calculation how many hen you need to have in your garden in order to produce that many eggs for your filtration. So it's a very, very expensive filtration method, but it's also
so what do they use instead then? That's the next question, because
so the next question,
if they don't use this, then they have to use some
there's
other
bentonite. So bentonite is a clay derived filtration system, which is like a liquid as well, and same thing, he has this potential of coagulating as soon as it's in contact of solids, proteins, material, and then basically trap it, and then as the weight increases, it basically falls down at the bottom of the barrel. Most of the filtration is actually done in barrel at that level of wine. Otherwise, as I said earlier, the wine is in tank, and then it goes through a filtration system, usually a machine, and then after that it goes into bottling straight away with a little bit of sulfur, obviously, to protect from the oxidation. But that's a different conversation to be had.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, is it safe to say that if somebody really is looking for a vegan wine as such, but it's not actually on the label, it's fairly common that it's going to be vegan, vegetarian?
Indeed. The assumption would be that whatever you take. So I'll take a random bottle from the shelf. So here says agriculture contains sulfites. The size of the bottle, so 750 ml, which again has to be stipulated. The alcohol, 14. Production France, the appellation, blah 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 blah, and there is no back label. So you actually have
that's a French wine for you. There we go. That's terrible.
Precisely. So this is probably bought in France as well. So therefore there's much less information because you don't have to. And the labeling system worldwide is basically the name of the wine, the alcohol level, the size of the bottle. So filling up. Volume, again, you see, he might not see, but you see the little sign of
for pregnant ladies, yes,
and do not drink my wine because it's not good for you, and the appellation system and so on and so forth. So it's actually quite limited. Let's look at another. So this is from Switzerland, and again, sulfites, alcohol, where it's made, by whom it's made, and the 75 centiliters, the appellation system, so Neuchâtel, the name of the cuvée, the vintage, and that's pretty it. That's pretty.
I mean,
this is a very special wine. This is made by a maverick of Pinot Noir in Switzerland. I know we don't really see Swiss wines and so on and so forth, but what I'm trying to say here is that that these guys works really traditionally, and there is definitely oak and so on and so forth. There's no way this is not vegan or vegetarian.
I mean, and in many ways, I think if people really looking for a vegan wine, you can say that anything which you pick up from the shelf and cloudy, that's going to be vegan, because there's no
filtration whatsoever. There's no filtration whatsoever. So exactly, that's
it's obviously it's a different topic whether people are comfortable with wine being a little bit cloudy or not, if they like it or not, because it quite often happens to me when I talk to people about wine being vegan or wine being sedimented. People are a little bit afraid, but they really want to have the vegan side of things. So it's a weird thing that it's actually the two comes together hand in hand, because
I think the separation between non-vegetarian vegan wine and vegan and vegetarian wine is very shady to a certain extent, because exactly there's no actually laws as such nowadays as what it has to be stipulated on the label. But on the other hand, as I said, in terms of system, the filtration system, if you think about anything else than bentonite, Cuselgur it's called as well, or egg white, those processes are hugely expensive.
Yeah.
So, the repercussion on your bottle of wine, especially nowadays, when the business is worldwide and you need to ship your wine from A to B and so on and so forth, you want to try, unless you're an iconic winery called, Petrus or Mouton or Chateau Margaux or Silver Heights and so on and so forth in the US, there's no potential to do so.
Yeah.
It's far too expensive. And imagine, breaking 10,000 egg and separating the white and the red, the white and the yellow. It's a full day of labor. So again, when you take the economic part of it, it makes really, really sense that most of the wines will be vegetarian because these treatments are just too complicated and again far too expensive.
And on just one more interesting question, which just came into my mind. Obviously, again, you in the hospitality sector, how many people actually asking for vegan, vegetarian wines in a high-end restaurant? And is this interest or is this demand growing recently?
So it's the opposite, actually. When we have demand for vegetarian menus or vegan menus or some for parties or for table, we always say the same thing, which what expressed is that if you go Bordeaux, there's a chance that at the top end you will encounter ones that are not vegetarian. But 95% of our wines are vegetarian, stated vegetarian. The only thing by law, again, and more dangerous for health issue, not a choice. I mean, don't get me wrong, being vegetarian and vegan sometimes is a choice and sometimes is not. That is very, very clear. But more by choice or by no choice in general, and health issues is sulfites. Most of wines tells on the label wines contain sulfites. And on the two wines I've shown you, there's a little, very small, but contain sulfites. And that sulfites is, again, unless you're going for those natural wine side, which and no sulfites, most of wine and fine wines will contain sulfites because it's an antioxidant, it's a protective, and it's actually quite beneficial to a certain extent if you don't obviously add too much of it just to protect your wines as it's bottled. And sulfites, being an antioxidant, it protects from oxygen, and oxygen is the worst enemy of wine. Just the example of you open a bottle of wine, you have a glass, you drink it, you leave the bottle open on the table, you forget about it, you come back the day after and the wine smells differently. Oxidation. It's the same process, if you think about it, of iron left outside like normal as a fence or whatever, and then over years and even decades it will oxidize and therefore it will rust. That's exactly the same process. With wine is just a bit faster, obviously. But so this is something that we are careful with, that we know the customer basis, and then we always reassure them. And if we're not sure ourselves, which normally we're about 95% sure of what it is, we recommend something that is slightly different to make sure that we follow their needs or their decisions. But otherwise, as I said, most other wines are pretty safe on that side. It's only on any wine list, I always stipulate most of our wines, 99% of our wines contain sulfites, because I'm not a big fan of natural wines personally.
I know your personal taste.
I buy a few because there's some really good ones out there. Don't get me wrong, but it's not something that the orientation of the business I drive is all about.
But you don't see vegan, vegetarian wines, the demand for them is growing dramatically.
It's growing. I think to some extent we're all a bit careful on what we eat and what we drink and our health in general. But I don't think it's something that's yet
not skyrocketed in questions.
Exactly, it's not a percentage of the market. I think it's part of the market, but it's not a clear percentage of a group of people or percentage of people that will say I only drink vegetarian and vegan wine. We're not there yet. And as I said, for the wine aspect, for the wine business in general, it's really a matter of maybe changing the labeling laws, but otherwise, in terms of practice in the vineyards as well as the winery, it's not going to affect enormously what they do in general, because there's no animal part.
Yeah, exactly. So what we can conclude is, if somebody is looking for vegan or vegetarian wines, first of all, most things are vegan or vegetarian. Probably 90-95% of the wines are.
Indeed.
Now it's simply because of price, labor, and everything else which affects this. Also, quite often it is on the label stating if it's vegan or vegetarian. But if you're really unsure, obviously, first of all, ask somebody who knows about the product. Secondly, go for cloudy wines and don't be afraid of the cloudiness.
Exactly. I mean, if you go to shops like the Tesco of this world, the Waitrose of this world, the Marks & Spencer of this world, to find and buy a bit of wine for your weekly consumption, very often those guys, they have the labeling on the back that says if the ones are vegetarian or vegan, because it's something that they implement themselves in order to satisfy the demand on the guest profile. I've seen that quite often. For us in the restaurant, in the trade, it's well, again, people assume that we know what we're talking about. So therefore, we don't. I'm not looking after such a labeling. As I said, from my importer side, I can clearly see which wines are or not, and that 99% of the time, everything is vegan.
Exactly. Well, if anyone wants to be assured, Perfect Cellar has the vegan stamp on the vegan wines anyway, in terms of on the website. So we just
I think it's important
for consumers
to reassure people. I think it's really,
exactly.
really important to have that know-how and spreading of knowledge that in essence, as a vegetarian or as a vegan, you're safe, because it's not fair to be fed or to be given something that is against your belief, or just your tradition, or just your needs. So that's why, as a restaurant and as an operator, I'm very conscious and deliberately clearly identifying which ones are in terms of conversation is communication.
Yeah. Well, I think we had a good little chat about vegan wines. People shouldn't be afraid of vegan wines, and if they're looking for
no. Again, that doesn't change anything in the winery in terms of processing. So therefore, it's not going to be a better or worse wine than the other. So it's really,
regardless whether it's vegan or not. Anyway, thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you, Csaba. Thank you very much.
On another topic, another day.
Exactly, around wine of around the world, and what we do at Perfect Cellar as well.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye. Bye.